Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive. We're always talking about trying to live more sustainably, especially with everything going on with climate change. But how do we actually make those changes stick? It's not always easy. So today we're going deep into the world of those carbon footprint tracking apps, those CFTAs. They're everywhere these days.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how these apps are tapping into both technology and psychology.
Totally. And that's what we're digging into today. We're diving into some really fascinating research about how these CFTAs can be even more effective by understanding what motivates us to make those sustainable choices. We're talking food, we're talking transportation, all the big stuff. And get this, there are some pretty surprising findings about how things you do in one area of your life can actually spill over into others, even if you don't realize it.
It's not just about tracking numbers, it's about understanding the why behind our choices and then using that knowledge to help us make more sustainable decisions.
Okay, so before we get ahead of ourselves, let's start with the basics. What exactly are these CFTAs and how do they work? Paint me a picture.
So think of it like this. Imagine an app that's basically a personal accountant for your carbon footprint. You input your everyday activities, what you're eating, how you're getting around, even things you're buying. Then the app calculates the carbon footprint associated with all of that.
So you're not just guessing about your impact, you're actually seeing it, right?
Exactly. And I think that's what's so powerful about these apps. It's like holding up a mirror to your consumption habits and letting you see those tangible impacts over time.
I can see how that would be eye-opening. No more burying your head in the sand.
Right. It brings that awareness front and center. And the really encouraging thing is that people genuinely want to make a difference. There's so much talk about climate change, and people are looking for ways to take action. These apps provide a really practical, personalized way to do that.
Absolutely. But here's the thing. Knowing our impact is one thing. Actually changing our behavior, that's a whole other ballgame.
Right. You hit the nail on the head, and this is where it gets interesting. There's this thing called goal framing theory, which basically says that the way we frame a goal in our minds, it really impacts our choices, even when we're talking about things like sustainability.
So are you saying simply telling people to be green isn't enough? We need to dig a little deeper.
Exactly. This new research highlights the importance of framing those sustainable actions in a way that truly speaks to people's individual motivations.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break it down for me. What are we talking about here?
Well, the researchers honed in on four main types of goals. Now, bear with me. They sound a bit technical, but they're actually quite relatable. Normative goals, moral goals, hedonic goals, and gain goals.
Okay, those are our contenders. Hit me with the definitions. What's the deal with each of those goals?
Sure. Normative goals, those are all about wanting to fit in, to be like everyone else. It's choosing the eco-friendly option because, hey, that's what your friends are doing. Moral goals come from a sense of doing what's right, what you believe is the ethical thing to do, even if it means going out of your way. Hedonic goals, those are all about pleasure, enjoyment. Like maybe you decide to bike to work because it just feels amazing. And finally, gain goals are all about tangible benefits, like saving money on gas or getting healthier.
Okay, I'm seeing how those could play out in an everyday life. So we've got our four goal players, but do any of these goals dominate the game when it comes to making sustainable choices? Is it a one-size-fits-all kind of thing?
That's the big question, right? And what makes this research so fascinating is it seems like different goals hold more weight in different areas of our lives. It's not as straightforward as if you're motivated by saving money, you'll be eco-conscious in every single decision you make.
Okay, so tell me more about that. How do our food and transportation choices stack up when we look at these different goals? I'm ready to dive in.
Okay, so when we're talking about making sustainable food choices, things like cutting back on meat or choosing locally sourced produce, those society-related goals like wanting to fit in or caring about the environment, those seem to hold more weight.
Interesting. So peer pressure can actually be a good thing when it comes to eating more sustainably. Like, if all your friends are going vegan, you're more likely to hop on the veggie bandwagon too.
That's the idea. It's like that old saying, monkey see, monkey do, but with a positive spin. Our social circles can really influence our choices, even when it comes to food.
I can definitely see that happening. But what about transportation? Does that whole social influence thing play out the same way there?
Actually, no. That's where things get really interesting. The research found that self-centered goals, the ones focused on things like personal gain or just pure enjoyment, those were much more effective when it came to influencing transportation habits.
So you're saying messages about saving money on gas or having a more enjoyable commute, those would resonate more than, say, appealing to someone's sense of environmental responsibility, even if they're already using a CFTA and are aware of their carbon footprint.
It seems so. Highlighting those immediate personal benefits, that seems to be the key when it comes to changing behaviors around how we get from point A to point B. It's almost like our desire for those immediate personal rewards overrides those broader environmental concerns, at least when it comes to our deeply ingrained transportation habits.
That's wild. It's like we want to save the planet, but we also really don't want to give up our comfy car rides. So why do you think that is? Why is it so much harder to motivate people to make more sustainable transportation choices, even if they're already tracking their impact?
Well, think about it. Changing your transportation habits often means big upfront costs, right? Like buying a new electric car or figuring out the ins and outs of public transit. Or it could even mean a total lifestyle change, like moving closer to work or giving up your car altogether.
Yeah, that's a much bigger ask than swapping out a steak for a veggie burger once a week.
Exactly. So those bigger changes, those really ingrained habits, those require stronger, more immediate personal incentives to really get people on board. It's the difference between, hey, this could help save the planet down the road, and you could be saving a ton of money on gas every single month.
So it seems like we're hardwired for those instant rewards, especially when it comes to things we do every single day, like commuting. But okay, so we're starting to see how different goals play out in different areas of our lives. Is there anything else from this research that can help us, crack the code of behavior change when it comes to sustainable living?
Actually, yes. This research uncovered something super interesting called the spillover effect. And I think this has huge implications for how we approach sustainability as a whole.
Spillover effect.
Mm.
Okay, now you've got my attention. Tell me more. I need all the details. What is that exactly?
So imagine you start making an effort to reduce your carbon footprint in one area of your life, say. You start composting your food scraps, or maybe you commit to meatless Mondays.
Okay, got it. Composting, cutting back on meat, checking those off the list, feeling good. What happens next?
Well, a spillover effect is when that initial action, that composting or cutting back on meat, it inspires you to make other positive changes, maybe even in areas you hadn't even considered before. It's like one good deed leads to another.
Interesting. So, like, my composting efforts could inspire me to finally get around to insulating my drafty old windows.
Exactly. It's possible. Our brains are funny that way. One positive action can create this ripple effect, leading to even more positive choices. But what's really fascinating is that this research found that when people were presented with information about the societal benefits of eco-friendly transportation, like how it could improve air quality or reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, even if they didn't immediately change their driving habits, they ended up using less energy at home.
Whoa, that's so wild. So even though the messages were focused on transportation, they ended up influencing their behavior in a completely different area of their lives.
Yeah.
That's incredible. It's like their good intentions for the planet spilled over into their homes. That's amazing. So even if they weren't quite ready to give up their car, they were still finding other ways to make a difference. I love that. But how does that even happen? Did the study explain this whole spillover thing?
Yeah, they had a few ideas about why this might be happening. Remember how we were talking about those mobility changes being kind of tough to make in the short term? Like those habits are just so ingrained. Well, it could be that just being exposed to those messages about the bigger picture, the societal benefits, like how reducing our carbon footprint could mean cleaner air and less reliance on fossil fuels, maybe that sparked something. Maybe it created this sense of responsibility, this desire to take action, even if it wasn't directly related to how they were getting around.
That makes a lot of sense. So maybe they weren't ready to hop on the bus just yet, but they were willing to turn the thermostat down a notch or two.
Exactly. It's all connected, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's so cool about this spillover effect. It shows us that our choices, they don't exist in a vacuum. Sometimes taking one positive step can create this ripple effect, inspiring us to make other positive changes, even in surprising areas.
This is also fascinating. It really makes you think about all the little things you can do and how they might lead to even bigger changes down the line. But okay, before we get too carried away, let's bring it back to those CFTAs. How do these findings about goal framing and spillover effects actually apply to those apps? Are we talking about a future of like hyper-personalized, goal-driven nudge machines?
It's definitely a possibility, and researchers are looking into it. Imagine a CFTA that not only tracks your emissions, but also learns about you. Like, what makes you tick? Are you all about saving money? Or maybe you're really driven by health, or maybe it's about aligning your actions with your values. Whatever it is, the app could use that knowledge to personalize the feedback it gives you, nudging you towards more sustainable choices in a way that actually resonates with you.
Okay, that's brilliant. Like having a little green angel on your shoulder, whispering those eco-friendly tips at just the right moment.
Mhm.
But instead of just throwing generic advice at you, it actually speaks your language and knows what will motivate you.
Exactly. And the research backs this up. The study we've been talking about actually found that aligning the messages people receive through the CFTA with their own personal goals made those messages way more effective.
It's not just about throwing information at people, it's about making it meaningful to them. It's about making sustainable living feel less like a chore and more like, well, more like a journey towards a better future,
Mm,
one that aligns with what we care about most.
absolutely. And that's where the real power lies. It's in understanding ourselves. It's in recognizing what motivates us, what drives us to make the choices we make. And once we tap into that, once we figure out those deeper values, that's when we can start making those conscious, sustainable choices across all areas of our lives.
Yeah.
Choices that don't feel like sacrifices, but rather like steps towards a future we actually want to be a part of.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I feel like I have a whole new perspective on the potential of CFTAs and how understanding our own motivations is key to creating a more sustainable world. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this. Think about those goals that really resonate with you, especially in different parts of your life. Maybe you're all about saving those dollars when it comes to getting around, but then when you're at the store, it's all about those ethical considerations.
Mm,
It's not always the same, right? It's about knowing what matters most to you and using that knowledge to make more informed, impactful choices.
so true. And don't forget, this is a journey, not a race. It's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly. Every step we take towards a more sustainable future matters, no matter how small it seems. So as we wrap things up here, remember, knowledge is power. And when it comes to making a difference, well, you've got the power right in your
Pen
hands.
in your pocket, on your phone.
It's so true. On that note,